Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scouting Sessions. I'm Jérôme Bérubé, and as always, I'm joined by Brad Allen. Hey, Brad, how's it going?
It's going better. Actual night of sleep for the first time in over a week after getting our ranking out here, so it's much better now.
So yeah, as Brad mentioned, we have released our draft rankings for November. You guys can check it out on hockeyprospect.com. So we're going to touch on that a bit today, talking about five different players. But just before that, Brad, let's maybe discuss the top three ranked player on our list, which are Keaton Verhoff, Ivor Stenberg, and Gavin McKenna. So maybe Brad, maybe touch on maybe the top three here and maybe the reasoning behind our rankings of those trees. If people want more like content like this, I did another video with Mark Edwards about basically our top 8 on the list. So it's already on the YouTube channel, so you can check that out. But Brad, I'll give you the floor here. Maybe give your take here on the maybe our top 3 basically that we discuss in depth in our scouting meetings.
Sure. So I'll start with Verhoff. Mark made the quote when he put it up on the website for us there, comparing him to Eric Lindros. That was one of my quotes because you look at him, he's a 6'4" battle tank with ridiculous skill set, and the toolkit's pretty good too. I compared the toolkit to Leo Carlson's at the same stage, and as all of you know now, that is more than acceptable for the job. Obviously, with defensemen, you want to keep them as nimble as possible for the four-way multi-directional ability when it comes to actually defending. But we think Verhoff can get there, which is why we have him ranked as highly as we do. Incredible point shot. And he can be used on the half wall on the power play, which he has been. And that really speaks to his ability to really control possession with man advantage in different positions, which I think speaks to him having a pretty good offensive instincts for the game in general. I know that he's trying to do everything, and he's in the middle of experimentation as a 17-year-old kid. Or is he late birthday, Jérôme? I don't even know if Verhoff's late birthday.
No, he's only turning 18 next summer. So he's
there you go. Young. Way young. So 17-year-old kid in college, there's some experimentation. And yes, that's going to lead to some mistakes. And mistakes are happening. I thought the most of the performances I watched were against some of the top teams he's faced. And I honestly thought he limited his mistakes at more than an acceptable level in my viewings. He's very good at slowing down the forecheck. He can deal with double and triple coverage scenarios off of retrievals. He can exit himself. He can find options. The one thing, though, mention options, like the weak side exploitations playmaking is not at the same level as somebody like Chase Reed's. That's one of the fundamental differences between the two of them. It's what makes the conversation interesting, even when discussing those two, is that Chase Reed can open up the ice in a way Verhoff can't. But Verhoff has a frame that Reed's never going to have. And so it's pretty intriguing between the two of those in their differences. But Verhoff is like, Jérôme, you know this, like every scout on earth wants to draft this player. Every team wants this type of player. They're you can't get them through free agency or trades. They're with you forever. So I think it makes sense to keep him at the top for now. But admittedly, Ivor Stenberg. Okay, so the thing about Stenberg relative to basically any other player we're talking about in the top 10 on our list, Stenberg is so complete and you know exactly what you're getting already, where it's a real discussion when it comes to Albert Smits, Hemming's not playing, Belchet's is super raw. So it's one of those things you look down the list, that's why he's ahead of them. And then Gavin McKenna, okay, McKenna, let's put it this way. I think we're very kind at 3. When we watched Celebrini, Jérôme, how many shifts did you need to know that it was over? He was number 1 shift. Okay, I needed 2 sequences. I don't think we've even talked about him. Like, that's the thing, maybe is a misconception behind the scenes, is like, we have to talk about players we're not comfortable with or we don't think are in the right position. So like Celebrini, we watched legitimately, like there was no point even watching him and we just move on. That's usually the indicator you need to know you got something really special, right? Like Connor McDavid, that type of level. That's not happened at all with Gavin McKenna. It's the exact opposite. It's how high can we keep the player because of his talent relative to the expectation that comes with it, relative to the reality of his impact rate and what he actually is as a prospect. So, not all prospects that are elite level talents, they don't all have to play the same way. And that means he doesn't have to be a Celebrini. He doesn't have to do what Connor McDavid does. He never will. Like Nathan McKinnon, we talked about it in our rankings, Jerome. The problem with McKenna is he doesn't have McDavid or McKinnon's speed. And although he's a good skater, he's not an elite or dynamic skater. And that's unlikely to change because some of it is mechanically based, not just a power-based issue. So there's development flaws. There's development that comes with skating. And yes, some of it's correctable. Some of it is not as correctable as people think. I think it's a bit of a misconception. So that's gonna influence him a bit. And then you look at the off-puck instincts relative to Stenberg, and I think it's to say it's literally a night and day difference, right? Like Stenberg is twice the player off the puck that McKenna is. And then you look at the offensive ability and what McKenna is doing. So this goes back to our conversation that we had in depth last season on James Higgins at the same stage, ironically enough, almost exactly the same stage, which was that he was underperforming in college. And one of the two primary reasons, one was he's not inside driven enough. The other is way too many execution errors in transition. Now, to McKenna's credit, he's more talented than basically anyone. So the execution error rates should die down once he gets more comfortable with what he can and cannot exploit when it comes to his handling through triangles and transition and his insanely crazy experimental creativity with the handling and the playmaking. So we think that will go past where Higgins is and already is in some ways. But the other issue, which is more pressing, I think, for both of us and our staff, is that he's not inside driven in any capacity, and he has no idea how to exploit a player if his hands fail him. He doesn't know how to cut through hands. He doesn't know how to protect the puck. He doesn't know how to leverage. He doesn't know how to use his frame. There's no base instincts that will make him, AKA, a Pavel Datsyuk down the road. So if he's not going to be a 200-foot player, which based off what we're seeing, there's no chance of that right now. If he's not going to be a 200-foot player, what he has to do is make sure to die the mistakes down and to get into high danger areas so that he can magnetize the defense, draw the defense to him, and that will further enhance his remarkable playmaking ability. And that's not happened at all. And this is the most similar situation I've ever seen to Alexander Dag at this time. That said, he has the U20s to exploit here. He can destroy the U20s, and hopefully he gets some sort of reset and looks like a completely different player. So that's where I'm at with McKenna. Stenberg has done the opposite. In the SHL, he has looked so good. He's absolutely forced our hand into number one conversation. That is exactly what you actually want to see. He is incredibly smart, incredibly well-rounded, will exploit defensive coverage in tight, understands physicality, understands leverages, does not back down, takes hits, makes plays, plays a mature pro-style game that McKenna absolutely fundamentally lacks. And talent-wise, yes, he's a bit under McKenna in terms of handling and playmaking ability, but it's still incredible, and he's a better shooter than McKenna at this stage in his development. So he actually has part of his offensive ability, I think, is actually ahead of McKenna. So that's the top three for me, Jerome.
So, folks, there you have it. There's no gray zone with Brad. You ask him a question, he's going to tell you what he feels like. And that's the great thing about Brad. All right, so that's a bit of a look at the top three. Again, you can check our other video that I did with Mark. We talk about the top 8 here. So for the rest of the video, we're going to talk about other players from this ranking. And for the first series of players that we're going to talk about, they actually are 2 goalies. So they're not on this list, but they are number 1, number 2. On our goalie list, and they're both surprisingly both from Russia, and they're both named Dmitri. So let's talk, Brad, about Dmitri Borichev and Dmitri Ivchenko, our top 2 ranked goalies from Russia. So I'll give you the floor here, Brad. let's talk about your top 2 ranked goalies. What do you like about them, and what do you see here with those two?
Yeah, so they are our top 2, and it's by a considerable margin, I would say. Like, there's a pretty big range after them, even though we have some other goalies ranked in the B range. Borichev is the only goalie I would say is a top 40 player in this draft. And then Ivchenko is the only A-rated goalie we currently have. And admittedly, it's difficult territory even for me, because regardless how long you do this, you still get introduced to scenarios you're not used to. And this is, I've never had a top-ranked goalie being the backup in a system before. And that's nothing to do with talent. It has to do with Omsk and how they operate. And usually in Russia, there's an age hierarchy as opposed to a talent hierarchy in net, with obviously some exceptions to this rule. But Ivan Yunin still has the net from him for now. And Ivan Yunin is a talented goalie that was drafted by Colorado in the 5th round a couple of years ago. So makes sense that he's still a backup. So the big thing with Ivchenko is that when you look at him relative to the rest of the class, he has the most upside. He's got the best kicking reflexes, some of the best extension rates. He has the best hands, one of the best gloves, right up there with Snell. Him and Snell, I would say, have the 2 best gloves. Skating base is the best in this draft. It's ahead of Trables, who I think is probably runner-up in that regard. Incredible technical ability that's packed into a 6'3.5" frame with ridiculous reflexes, fluidity, coordination. He had the best save sequence by a mile out of any goalie I've seen this season. But I will admit this, he's a backup and he's on umps, which means most of his competition isn't top competition. And I need more of that to actually know what we're dealing with, because as most of you know, who's listening to this, the game's very mental, especially in net. And you really need to know what the consistency rates are and how he calibrates. Does he calibrate as a starter? And I don't know that yet. So admittedly, I'm a bit unknown here. There's some gray that we're going to have to uncover as the season progresses. But in terms of raw upside, Ivchenko is the only A-rated goalie for me in this class for now. Borichev could catch up and pass him, depending on how his season goes. Now, he's in a very different situation, as you know, Jérôme. So I think he was called the main Locos team recently, but before that, he was playing in Loco 76, which is their second team.
Yeah.
It's not as good a team, which is good for us because it means more high danger chances against him, which gives us more intel, which we don't have with Ivchenko at the same time, right? So there's some contrast there. Now, Dmitri Borichev, more instinctual than Ivchenko. Ivchenko's major fault is that if he falls behind the play, he doesn't match the urgency at times. So if he's in an overlap position, there's a backdoor option and it sneaks through coverage and he misinterprets the initial lateral pass, he won't explode as hard as he can back out in front of the play on the backside. And then he'll get exploited and get scored on type of thing. That's one of his major issues, as an example. Where with Borichev, he's a bit behind technically. He might misinterpret the initial overlap that I just talked about with Ivchenko, but then he'll do everything in his power to scramble and match that urgency, show that competitive fire he has to get back out in front of it. And that, Jérôme, reminds me of a Russian Carter Casey. There are some Carter Casey in this kid in terms of how he battles, the compete, the explosiveness, the raw ability is there. But Ivchenko, for instance, off scrambling sequences, maintains tighter seals. He's better understand how to shift laterally through coverage for redirect options than Borichev, and he has better extension rates than Borichev, and again, better kicking reflexes. Borichev's upper body comes closer to matching Ivchenko's upper frame, but the lower halves, I think, is really where Ivchenko dominates him. That said, Borichev has been consistent. He's been a starter. And I love his butterfly. He absorbs everything, Jérôme, in that first. He's unbelievable at getting big, wide, and sealed in his butterfly. And so there's a really good base to work with Borichev's game as well. But again, a bit behind technically. So it's going to be interesting. One has to catch up technically. The other has to catch up a bit mentally. And it's going to take us a season to figure it out. But relative to last year, I would say they're both slightly behind the top 2. Specifically with Andreonov and Ravensbergen, but I would say they're on par with Frolov, both. So that gives you an idea of the top end. It's a bit lower than last year's and the previous years, but the depth is good. We have found, so last time we talked, we were about 20 goalies that we'd scouted. I'm up to 70 now. It's done. Basically, I'm sure there's 1 or 2 I'm missing somewhere out there, but I did scour the earth and we got around 70 goalies watched now, which is basically the draft. And I would say this falls into now average to above average territory in terms of depth, specifically depth. Actually, I would say maybe even good for depth for now. So And the other thing I'll say is like this class, not that we're going to talk about it, big. There's a lot of big goalies this class, which is interesting because I think the position's actually moving to be a tiny bit shorter again, like 6'2", 6'3", I think might be the perfect height again, where most people were looking 6'4", 6'5" a couple seasons ago. So we'll see.
Well, I mean, scouting goalie has always been very difficult. And
tell me about it. Yeah.
And then, our top 2 goalies, one is a backup and one plays in the weaker division in the NHL. So
much weaker, way weaker. It's not even close.
So not easy again, but usually you will find really good goalies in Russia, and those 2 looks like upside wise and potential to be very good. So, all right, let's move on, Brad. We're going to talk about 3 more players here. So let's move on we're going to go to Sweden with our next player with William Hakansson, big defenseman who plays a regular shift in the SHL, plays a regular role on his team, plays 14, 15 minutes per game usually. And we have him rank 19 in our November list. Not a big offensive guy. Obviously, that's not going to be his thing. Like, his thing will be shutting down people. Big 6'4", defends well. Very good at taking space and time away from opposing forwards. Physical. There's a lot to like here. The skating could be a little bit better, but he's probably going to be 6'5" when he's at the NHL level, and we think his skating will be fine by then. My player comp for this player is Mika Mikola from the Florida Panthers. So that's my player comp for this player who could play a similar role at the NHL level. I think if you look at what Mikola did with the Panthers in the playoff, that's pretty much what I see this guy doing as a second pairing guy who shuts down people, is physical, plays a lot on the PK also. So there's a lot to like here. He's obviously not. If you're scouting and you're looking for highlights, you're probably not going to see any kind of highlights from this player. But if you're really watching the game, watching the details of the game, I think the more you watch, the more you're going to like this big defenseman out of Sweden. Brad, what's your take about William Hakansson?
Well, I know for some of you listeners, it's like, big shutdown defenseman that may or may not play up a bit. It's like, I know for a lot of you, it's not as sexy as Henry Cavill's butt chin and warm rain. Okay, I get it, but he's a scouts player. I mean, like when it comes to scouting, it's one of the most difficult things to parse. I know for some of you, like if you're in fantasy leagues or something, you're always looking for production. You're always looking for scoring. In actuality, like you have to find players that can really shut down that scoring. So that's what Hakansson brings to the table. What separates him and why we're so aggressive with him is how he does it. So typically what happens is if you get shutdown players that are playing in the SHL, you see them have to get limited minutes because sometimes they rush their options because their processing rates are falling behind. That, for the large part, has not happened with Hakansson. In fact, it's been the opposite. There's been times where he's shown like really advanced processing, understand how to use his skating and his off looks and his hesitation feints to slow down opposing players. And he's very good at not getting rushed in tight spaces. So I've seen him in situations where he's getting double coverage. He's got very limited time and space, and instead of just tossing a puck like most shutdown defensemen do, or going glass and out, he's given himself every opportunity he has, buying time, creating those windows for higher execution rates. So that's incredibly significant because for shutdown defensemen, we have to weight the retrieval and exit rates even more so than for some of these other types. Because if they don't have exit retrievals, guess what? Shutdown defensemen have no chance of playing. Now, the other factor, which makes him that much more intriguing to me, Jérôme, is the swarm style. And so some shutdown D, they're more like a Chris Tanev, where it's all about their placement and understanding how to position themselves at the right time, right place. Block rates go through the roof. Their stick work is everything. They can deflect pucks. They can take away lateral passing plays, cut them off. this kid has that high pressure, high cooker, crazy barrel down on you type of style where it's like you got a bear on your back and he's just trying to maul you. And that can be extraordinarily useful. And then you factor in this kid's conditioning. Jérôme, we keep bringing him up. I'm going to keep doing it again. Charles Alexis Legault is not that level. It was close. This kid's super conditioned for his size. He can barrel all over the ice. It's really impressive. So that's a huge factor. And the other factor is when he does make an error, I think he's one of the most competitive players in the draft, trying to make up the distance. He'll try to recover that ground. I've seen him throw his face in front of pucks. He's trying to go Frankenstein 101 here. He doesn't care what happens. That's a very good sign. If you're willing to sacrifice your face, you're probably willing to do a whole lot for your team, and that's what he is. So extremely impressive. I think Jérôme, I had watched him lock guys, and I was coming Jérôme. I was like, this player looks pretty good. Let's watch more of him. And then Jérôme steals the comp. Jérôme finds the comp before me. So a little devastated about that because it's such a good comp. I think Nico Mikkola makes a lot of sense. A bit shorter and a little different in some ways, but very, very good comp overall in terms of like upside, what he can be, and how that matters for a playoff. Not only playoff team, but playoff contender.
Yeah, I'm wondering. My guess, there's a very good chance he's going to be at the World Junior for Team Sweden. I know he was at the U20 tournament like a few weeks ago. So my guess, there's a really strong chance he's going to be at the World Junior in Minnesota. So World Junior this year, we might have a
very interesting tournament, huh?
Yeah.
Holy.
Yeah.
This is huge now with McKenna's downfall. I mean, this is his chance to make me look stupid in this video, and I'm excited about that. And we'll see. The Stenberg versus him. How many scouts do you think are going to watch that game, Jérôme?
A lot. I mean, very often maybe with Team Canada, Albert Smiths with Latvia.
There's so many good players in this U20. It's awesome.
So that should be a pretty cool tournament if you care about the NHL draft. That a lot of good potential players that will play in that tournament. All right, so we're a big fan of Hakansson. Maybe one last thing about him is that sometimes we scout player, and sometimes players they don't really know what they are, right? Sometimes their offense, they don't know really exactly what they're going to be at the NHL level. There's no question this kid knows what he is. He knows exactly what he is, and he plays exactly like he's going to play at the NHL level. So I think that's something scouts in the NHL really like about prospect when they obviously scout them and also talk to them. When the players really know his game, that's usually a really good sign for the future for that player. So let's move on, Brad, to our fourth player, and we're going to go to the OHL with Nikita Klepov of Saginaw, who was in the USHL last year. He was born in Florida, but grew up in Russia. Now he's back in, North America, US last year. And then, he's still in the US with Saginaw, but playing in the OHL. Brad, really talented player. Very, you have to be blind to not see a top 6 upside with this player. Really, really talented. Can really shoot a puck, has really good hands. Also can make players around him better. Really good on the power play. My first time watching him this year was at the Ilinka, and he was phenomenal on the power play with Jack Hextall, Blake Zielinski, and he was a big reason why Team USA won the Ilinka this year. So, and in the OHL, he's been really good with Saginaw. Him and Barabanov have been really good together on the top line with their team. Barabanov is a 06 born Russian that played in the USHL last few years. And he's actually in our top 64, even as a 06 born player. But Klepov has been really good. I mentioned the power play. I used to think he was a bit too much of a power play merchant based on what I saw at the Ilinka. But when we were doing our meetings, I was actually looking at his stats this year, 5-on-5 stats and power play stats, and and surprisingly, a lot of 5-on-5 production from him. So my assumption was wrong. He's not just a power play merchant. He has performed really well 5-on-5 this season. So Brad is a huge fan of this player. I'll let Brad talk about it, but we have some disagreement a bit. Maybe the placement or the rankings of this player. So Brad, I'll let you talk about him, and then we can, continue the conversation after.
Yeah, sure. So the reason I love the player so much, stylistically, I emphasize stylistically. I do not expect this kid to have the production I'm about to mention. He reminds me of a hybrid between Nikita Kucherov and Pavel Dorofeyev. I didn't scout Kucherov in his draft year, but Dorofeyev we got right, Jérôme, back in 2019. We were very high on him. We liked him a lot. And one of the main reasons why is because of Dorofeyev, and Kucherov obviously has his quality too, the ability to extend their operational windows relative to what the defensive pressure is. So what it means is he can exploit space, but he can also buy himself space. And it all comes down to the processing rates, the adaptive processor specifically, and that's enhanced by feints. The ability to slow down the opposing defenseman, the ability to remain untelegraphed within their intentions. That is what makes Kucherov remarkably special, and it's one of the reasons Dorofeyev is such a monster at being able to score goals. So I think this kid has that. So that's the reason I think so highly of him. Now, admittedly, it's a bit small, not the most gifted skater like Kucherov, not the most gifted. I mean, now Kucherov technically is a magician at times. Don't get me wrong, but in terms of like open ice, power skating, that's not his hallmark. That's not Dorofeyev's either. But it works for them because of how they operate, and that's what I think is going to happen with Nikita Klepov. I think that the way he operates is going to allow him to compensate for the lack of high end skating base that he doesn't have, and his size, which is really the toolkit is the ultimate determining factor. I think if people have him a bit lower than I do. So that's it. So we still put him like 11th, right, Jérôme? Which I think are around 11th on our list.
Yeah.
So
11. Yeah.
11. So that's higher than I think I've seen otherwise. I'll be surprised if we have to drop him and other people don't have to move him up. Let's put it that way. There's so much here, and as you mentioned, he's a power play weapon, absolute specialized for the power play. And if the even strength is what I think it is, well, then that's a heck of a player in the long term. But it's early. We don't have as many games as we need. We've seen different stuff, so we'll see how it goes. But there's a tremendous amount of potential with this player.
Yeah, I mean, I think where we disagree a bit is maybe the 5-on-5. Even though he has produced, like in my viewings, he's been, could have been better. Like I just watch him. I mean, those games don't matter. Don't get me wrong, but like I just watched him at the 2 games this week against the NTDP, and he was, not so good, right? So, but it was a bit of like similar to some of the games I saw this year. So it's not like he doesn't compete, like because he works hard. But some games he just like some games he's very quiet, and I guess the size skating combo maybe does play a reason why he's not as dynamic as someone who can really skate. Let's per example, who will be a lot easier to notice because of his skating. Sometimes
let's put this way, Jérôme. He's not as good a skater as Stenberg. He's not even which I think is important for everyone. Just try to give some contrast there. I think it's relatively, it's slightly above average, I would say, over when you project it out, maybe slightly above average at best.
Yeah,
over Stenberg, not the case. So
I mean, Stenberg, like if you watch him play last year to now, like you see the skating has improved. So and he's an older, he's a late birthday, so he's a bit older than Klepov. So maybe by the end of the year, the Klepov skating will be like much better than what he is now. So we have done this for so long. We have seen kids like, the skating is a bit average in October, November, and then we watch them in March, and it's like there's nothing wrong with that player's skating. So player do get better, and we as scout, we need to update our assessment because players do change very fast during a full year of scouting. So yeah.
Do you know the best example that was, Jérôme? Was was Cyan Solberg in his -1 U18s. I was there live and I was texting you guys like, this is a player, but the problem was the power output with the skating. The next season was not a problem. It's not remotely an issue. He went from like slow twitch, all type 1 fibers to a ton of type 2 out of nowhere. And it was like, whoa, okay. Growth rate, you never know, right? You never know. So
there's a ton of players like this. Sometimes players like the skating is fine, but it's like their energy level that is really down. And then it like you watch a game, you don't like the kids might be more tired, and it does affect the skating a bit more because there's not much energy. And then you watch him in a game a few weeks later, and his energy is like super amp up, and then the skating does like is a bit more dynamic because of it. So scouting is tough, guys. All right, so that will do it for Klepov. Really talented player. He's putting a lot of points on the board with Saginaw. Looks like he's going to be a 90, 100-point player this year if he continues at this pace. And then, we'll see how he goes, in our list. Like, he's 11 right now. The thing, as Brad mentions, like, Brad doesn't think he's going to drop. One thing is, like, the competition around him is not exactly awesome, right? So,
I mean, the teens, there's a couple names, but not many I think they could catch it. Certainly not many can catch a skill.
No, exactly. Yeah. And some guys that were, there's other guys you could see drop. And, there's like 2 players that have not even played this year. And like Lawrence has played 3 games and Emig has not played a game. We don't know if he's going to play this year.
Well, minus the link, in case somebody comes to the comment section with the link. No, we saw him there. We did see him. Everybody, we saw him. We love him.
There's a reason. There's a reason why he's ranked top 10 by us. Is that we saw him at the Linka. All right, so let's move on to our last player, Brad. We're gonna go to Simas Ignatavicius, who plays in Switzerland in the NLA. He's a late birthday, but he's playing a full time with his club team over there. Very impressive player. Brad, you saw him a lot more than me, so I'll let you talk a bit more about him. I saw him really early in the year, and I thought he looked like something that could be, at worst case, a depth player at the NHL level. But clearly he's better than that, based on your viewings. So I'll let you talk a bit about him because he's, no one has. So by the way, he's ranked 23 by us right now. So he's not ranked by anyone in the top 32 that I've seen. So this is like this is going to be a hockey prospect guy for now on.
This is our Cyan Solberg of this draft.
Matthew Nice.
Matthew Nice 101,
yeah. So Brad, let's talk about him. What have you seen from him? And I'll chime in after.
Well, sure. I mean, I talked about how it's a dream scenario to draft a player like Verhoff for the industry. This is my dream scenario, Jérôme. You know that. I love it. You got a Lithuanian who you said he was born in what? Michigan? Maine?
Memphis.
Memphis. I knew it was one of the M's. Born in Memphis in the States. Then he's playing his career in Switzerland, and he's already accelerated from U20 elite last year, and now he's playing the National League full time, and he's Lithuanian. This is not a common occurrence, everybody. This is a rare type of player. So the first thing I will say is that, like, this is not some sort of like, this can go back and forth. Maybe we have to drop him out of the 32 after, and we're trying to get ahead of it. This is a absolute, for sure, unquestionably top 32 player. And we might have him even a little too low. We might even be a bit too reserved here at 23. There have been performances where he absolutely has been top 15. We're just waiting to see a bit more, get an understanding of him a bit better. But I did get to watch like 8 or 9 games now of him full. So he's incredibly surprising. You hear Lithuanian descent, you're like, oh, if he's from Lithuania, maybe he's very raw in some ways, just super skilled. But then you find out he's been in Switzerland the whole time. And then you realize, oh, okay, well, if it's in Swiss hockey, then it's a bit different. But it's ironic because you had Leon Bichsel, who was like the best Swiss prospect in ages. He was played in Sweden. So you didn't have one. Now the best player coming out of Switzerland is Lithuanian. So it's very strange. He is a dual threat, incredibly intelligent, cerebral, 200-foot power forward that's missing nothing. So that sounds pretty good. So what's the downside? Why 23? The big reason would be he's playing around 13 to 14 minutes a night. And so there's certain performances where he's not as high impact as you would want. But then there's other performances where he completely exceeds expectations. He looks absolutely ridiculously good. Like unquestionably looks like a at least top 9 dual threat power forward in the NHL one day. That's scoring wise, probably 40-45. But then his upper performances, you mentioned Matthew Knies, that's what it looks like. This might be a Lithuanian style Matthew Knies type of player. Now he's a bit different. Like Matthew Knies, I would say mechanically a bit more of a gifted shooter in terms of his consistency. And I would say that his playmaking is maybe slightly under Knies, but only slightly. The handling is better, which is really surprising. His hands, I would say the most surprising element of this player is his ability to blend a power game with a hyper finesse game, but then time both correctly in most sequences against men in the National League. So that's like, for an 18-year-old kid to do that, that is super rare. That is ridiculously rare. Then you factor in that he can defend. He actually knows how to exploit through a neutral zone. He's a monster on a power play. His U20 elite production, we watched it together, Jérôme. Oh my God, some of his power play points are terrifying. It looks like Evgeny Malkin at times. It looks ridiculous with his shot. And his backhand, actually, that's something we should bring up. He has a very uniquely good backhand, which for a power forward is remarkably important because it means he can just drive and cut on his backhand and cut through hands when he can. And doesn't have to rely on all that hyper finesse talent, but he has it. So the blend is ridiculous. The only missing component is the conditioning. He's an 18-year-old kid. He's 6'3". He's over 200 pounds. He purposely operates with a dialed-down skating flow to him and only gear switches up when it's time to compete and get puck races going and everything. But that if the conditioning can get up to, say, we just talked about him, Hakansson's, if he can get more condition and start looking like Hakansson, then this is the dark horse of this draft. And I did not think in a million years I'd be talking about a Lithuanian kid in the National League who's the ultimate dark horse of this class. But just like any drafts are surprising, and you always find talent where you don't expect it. And this is a Jérôme special. Breaks my heart I didn't get this one, but Jérôme was like, hey, by the way, there's this Lithuanian. We should check them out, and I'm glad you told us to, because I would have been mad, Jérôme, if we had to wait till like February to find this kid or something. It would have been so sad. So I'm glad we got ahead of it from that perspective. This is a massive upside play. I won't be shocked at all if he is a first round pick in this draft. You bookmark that, everybody. Remember me. He might be a first rounder in this class.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Nice, and obviously we were like so high on Matthew Nice in his draft year, and not a lot of people were high on him. One thing about Matthew Nice was like one thing we liked was like how of a high compete he had. That there was no quit in his game. How would you compare that element of Matthew Nice to this kid? Because that's one thing. Like if Matthew Nice had the puck along the wall, it's like good luck getting the puck away from him. Like he was not losing any battles. Obviously, the level of competition is different. Like he's playing against men's in a very good men's league. So, what have you seen, maybe as far as like the compete, the battle level from him in the games you saw so far?
That's a great question. So with Knies, as you mentioned, like there's more consistent hustle and bustle relative to the I'm already forgetting this Lithuanian's name. Simas, was it Ignatavicius? Ignatavicius. So with Ignatavicius, he operates. This is where I bring in the cerebral component. He times his compete, where Knies just did it. If that makes sense, like Knies just had it. This kid has to time it. Now, there's a couple fundamental differences I should mention that you could argue is part of a competitive base. One is Knies looks to protect the puck more and be more aggressive around the net than this player. this player is willing to give up the puck more often than Knies was. Knies was looking to drive possession rates at a higher rate. But to your point, what would this kid look like in the USHL? I think we'd probably see higher possession driving rates for sure. So this is where league-to-league equivalencies come in. You got to be very careful about how you balance this. But right now, I would say that Knies is ahead puck protection-wise with using his frame, and he's more aggressive around the net area, and he's more aggressive in terms of just overall consistency rates of trying to keep a certain pace off the forecheck and back check, etc. But I'll say one thing about this kid. His attention to detail is insane. Mark Edwards, we were talking about this together when we were watching him. There was a forechecking sequence where he explodes in. He was actually a bit late. And I was like, oh, he's going to miss. He's mistimed this. This is a lost forecheck. And he actually slowed down, timed exactly when the defenseman was going to peel off of him, and he immediately cross-checked on the side that he was peeling and timed it perfectly. Knocked the kid right off, or knocked the grown adult right off balance. Immediately regained possession. I was like, oh, okay. There's a sixth sense to that type of skill set. So, like for some of you listening, I know like off puck games can improve. Physicality rates can theoretically improve. One thing that you almost never see with a prospect is if they have that attention to detail now, they never lose it. Right? It's you're always looking like for certain players, especially this age category, they're power forwards. You're almost waiting to see if they adapt it, right? Like Matt Boldy, he needed to adapt it. This player is the opposite. So that's it's an incredibly good sign when you see a kid with this level of attention to detail. It's like a Lenny Haminaho. Or do you want to bring up the Czech, Jérôme, that we talked about this class that's a bit similar as well?
Yeah. What's his name? Forgot. Let me check. I'll find it. Jakub Frollo is the kid from, yeah.
So like Frollo, Jakub Frollo in this class, Lenny Haminaho a couple of years ago, their attention to detail is so amazing at their age. It from a scouting spider senses tingling perspective, it's like, okay, they're not super talented or skilled, but there's so much nuance to them that from a pro level, they're actually better than they are juniors. It's like the total opposite of McKenna. So like McKenna's like one of the best junior players we've ever seen, right? But the pro elements aren't there yet. And that leads us to hesitation, which is why we've dropped him a bit. Where with this player, it's the opposite. This kid's meant for pro hockey. He's not actually like junior hockey. He's not even going to look as good. And guess what happened with Matthew Knies? That's exactly what happened with Matthew Knies. So maybe it happens here too.
Yeah. All right. Well, he's a really interesting player. We're gonna keep obviously watching him for the rest of the season, as we do with every single player on the planet. So yeah, that's going to be it for the episode of this week. Thanks everyone for watching. Just a reminder, you can check hockeyprospect.com to see your full rankings, top 32. If you want to be a member of the site, there's a subscription plan where you can have access to our top 64 and also our goalie list. But now you know the top 2 goalie. So, but I think we put the top 11 goalie on the list. So you can have access to that, and that does obviously help us, continue do this job. So, yeah, thanks a lot for watching, and thanks for the support. And we'll be back next week for another episode of Scouting Session. So have a good one, guys, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for listening.